Yeah, I don't know. I just remember it being so much brighter, I guess.
I'm Barbara Smith, and I've lived in Miami for 45 years now. The first thing you have to do when you come to Miami is learn to say Miami instead of Miami, because that's the way the Indian tribes said it, as I understand. So I had to learn that. But my first glimpse of Miami was when I was in high school, and I was on the speech and drama team, and we came here for a big competition. And one day I remembered it like a photograph. I was standing outside the Coleman years and years and years later, and what was the beautiful, elegant old hotel there is now an apartment complex. But I looked up and the fourth floor, and I remembered staying there with my fellow students to come and compete in Miami, and looking down and seeing the beautiful Coleman Theater, and thinking to myself, that's such a beautiful theater. I hope I get to see that someday, having no idea that decades later I would come and live here, and it would be a huge part of my life. At that time, Miami was pretty thriving, and it was a pretty liberal place, a very accepting community with B.F. Goodrich and its 1,900 employees, and lots more retail downtown, a busy place. The schools were larger, and we were not as ethnically diverse as we are now at all. I mean, that's just an extreme exaggeration, because we just weren't ethnically diverse, period. And so I think that our culture's been enriched by the diversity that we now have, and it's more a picture of the real world. But in those days, we were predominantly white Caucasian in this community. It was very supportive. We had, as I said, lots of retail. We had a lot of very well-off people, a few wealthy people. The middle class was extremely large, and people led good lives here. And it was a neat place to be in lots of ways, but they did not realize at that point in time their potential here in Miami. So I've watched it as it went down, extremely down in about 1986, 85, 86. And with the loss of Goodrich, it was like the domino effect. Many, many businesses went out. We still had NEO, the college, but enrollment decreased some. But it's always been something to be proud of in the community. But things changed downtown. There were a lot of empty storefronts, and all across America that was not so unusual in those days. People moved away from Miami after that. Goodrich went out, and as I said, the domino effect in businesses. So we had a lot of rebuilding to do, and we had to create a new kind of focus here in Miami. And that focus was hard to find, because it was at the very same time that we were leaving the industrial era. People were really, really struggling. A lot of them transferred to another town where Goodrich gave them employment, and we lost so many of our really supportive, more well-off residents who were very, very generous in what they provided in donations and time and commitment to making this a good place to live. So we had a real downtime there, and then we kind of shook off the dust and started thinking, and right in front of us was our most valuable asset, really, Route 66, and it became very, very popular. We have the longest main street in all of America that is actually Route 66, and so that kind of got our attention, and we found out that people came from all over the world, and they were just driving right through Miami, right past Route 66. They avoided the main street. People didn't come to town. They didn't shop. So we had to do something to get their attention, and we started focusing on that, and finally realized that tourism is our new economy, because we had so much to offer. And then I was elected president of the State Teachers Association, and I had to live in Oklahoma City for 7 years. And I would just come home certain weekends, and I had been on the ground floor of the very first committee to look at the feasibility of restoring a treasure in Miami that people took for granted, and really had considered tearing down. And that was the Coleman Theater, known in the early days as the Coleman Theater Beautiful. And it has its own incredible story of how it was built by George Coleman and how he was so wealthy from the lead and zinc mines. And he'd been so poor as a water well digger and suddenly rich, making up to $1 million a month by the time that like 1917 or so. And so he loved theater, and it was a hobby of his. And he built this grand palace. But it wasn't viable anymore because vaudeville had died. It was a movie theater for many, many years, and it was really deteriorating. The gold leaf was worn off. They had modernized a lot of it, and nobody realized there was a stage back there. There was just a big silver screen, and there was nothing but trash and storage back there. We hauled out 6 tons of debris when we. The city was debating because this place was leaking. It would still show movies, but if you came to a movie and it was raining, you sat under the balcony because water would trickle down the walls, and I always joked that if it happened to be a jungle movie, we had surround sound because you could hear the water running down the walls and so on. But we had very few people here. The air conditioning didn't work. It was drab. The carpet had been taken out. This original carpet you see today, original style carpet, the replica, had been taken away, and modern movie carpet put down, and there were holes in it. The city council said, no, we're going to tear it down. It's a prime location. We're just going to tear it down. We'll vote here in a little while. So we had a night of nostalgia, and we brought people in to tell their stories, and my students from the high school performed and entertained people. And the city council was sitting right in the middle, and the place was packed. And they voted to accept the gift to the theater, but they could not restore it, and that the committee that had done all this work and all this persuasion would be totally in charge of raising all the money and doing all the work to restore it. And we said, sure, we will. And they just agreed to pay the utilities and give us a small amount of money each year. And so that was in 1990. And so for 24 years, or 25 now, I guess, we've worked, and we're still not quite through, but we've astounded everyone. And we've had good days and bad days, but we built a new business. We were really committed to making it just like 1929, and we're almost there. No one thought it was going to be possible. They had just restored the 2,000-pound chandelier that we thought we'd never find, and they had installed that, and they'd already done the organs. So under Gerald, they did all that great stuff. But my job was to do stage lights, work on the stage. I'm a theater person. When I first came, they said, oh, you'll never make a difference there. There's no way. People have tried. You can't get anything done. It had been 5 years since we'd done anything significant. I said, oh, yeah, we are. We're going to do seats and carpet, and we're going to finish these walls and put back the foam marbling and all the fancy stuff, and we're going to do ballroom too. They said, you're crazy. You'll never do that. We don't have any money. But you know what? When you are really well off in a community, I think, that you become complacent, and you sometimes don't work as hard and change as much and do as much as when you are challenged. And that's probably true of individual lives as well. And then we go through another cycle of people taking it for granted, like it's always been here, and not realizing the blood, sweat, and tears that went into making it what it is. This is what sets my Anna apart. First of all, we're the gateway to Oklahoma. We're right on a turnpike. And we've got a lot of casinos that people come to, but there are a lot of towns like that. There are a lot of towns in America that have casinos, and they're on the interstate and all of that. And then maybe even be on Route 66, but we have all of that plus. We have the largest, grandest theater in all of America in a town this size, right smack in the middle of America. It's interesting to me that there are still hundreds and hundreds of people who've lived here for decades who have not been in the Coleman Theater for many, many, many years. So I think that this town has survived. It has a unique foundation, a unique creation. We had the first free public schools in Oklahoma. We have so many firsts here that people don't realize. And theater has been a central part of this community since the beginning. We have our ups and we have our downs. It goes in cycles. About 7 years ago, we were on the cusp, I think, because we had grants going, we had a lot of things going. And things changed politically and so on, and I think that we kind of lost the impetus there for a while, and we didn't do the things that we were wanting to do and planning to do. We weren't allowed to do some of those things in this community. And so now I think that we're back on the right track, but we're having to sort of backtrack and instead of continually moving forward. Society doesn't really work that way anyway, but we're no different. You go several steps forward and then you kind of sometimes slip back, and then you have to start moving forward. And I think that now we are beginning to move forward. I do. But it's going to take a lot of effort and patience. It doesn't happen overnight, but I think we are moving in a good direction.
Don't drag it out. Living like that doesn't mean a thing.